My name is Gloria Matthews, and I'm 58 years old. Life was peaceful after retiring from my counseling career, until that day at the supermarket. I was visiting my son James and his wife Tessa when we stopped for a cake. The cashier grabbed my wrist, suddenly her eyes wide with worry. "Your son comes here every Tuesday with another woman," she whispered. My heart stopped. James, my honest, loving son. Impossible. Yet something made me slip through the back door and watch him from a distance. I never expected what I discovered would shatter our perfect family image. Before I continue my story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever had your trust tested by someone you love. I had always been proud of the close relationship I shared with my only son James. After losing my husband Richard to heart disease 5 years ago, James became my rock, my support system, and the man of the family. He was always the responsible one, even as a child. Turning in homework on time, never sneaking out at night, the kind of son parents bragged about at neighborhood cookouts. When he met Tessa during their sophomore year at Boston University, I knew she was special. Their romance blossomed beautifully. College sweethearts who married right after graduation in a charming ceremony in Tessa's parents' backyard. For 7 years, they built what seemed like the perfect life together in a lovely colonial home in the suburbs outside Boston. James had done exceptionally well for himself professionally. At 35, he was already a senior financial advisor at Hamilton and Reed, one of the most prestigious firms in Boston. His colleagues respected him, his clients trusted him, and his bosses regularly praised his integrity and work ethic. Whenever we spoke on the phone, he would share stories about his latest successes, landing a major client, receiving a performance bonus, or being invited to exclusive industry events. 6 months ago, James and Tessa blessed me with my first grandchild, a beautiful baby girl they named Lily. I still remember the overwhelming joy I felt when I held her tiny body for the first time, her delicate fingers wrapping around my thumb. It was like holding James again all those years ago. Those first precious moments with Lily helped me finally make the decision I had been contemplating since retirement: to visit Boston for an extended stay and help with the baby. "Mom, you don't need to do that," James had insisted when I first suggested it. "We're managing fine. You should be enjoying your retirement, not changing diapers." But I could hear the exhaustion in Tessa's voice during our weekly calls, the struggle of balancing motherhood with minimal sleep that all new mothers face. "Nonsense," I told him. "There's nothing I'd enjoy more than spending time with my granddaughter, and I promise I won't overstay my welcome." 3 weeks ago, I arrived at their home, suitcase in hand, ready for a 2-month stay. James greeted me with a warm embrace in the driveway. "It's so good to see you, Mom," he said, taking my luggage. "Tessa's been counting down the days." Inside, Tessa welcomed me with baby Lily in her arms. The house was immaculate despite having a newborn. Tessa had always been an impeccable housekeeper. I was immediately shown to the guest bedroom, decorated with fresh flowers and my favorite scented candles. They had thought of everything to make me feel welcome. The first few weeks were blissful. I would watch Lily in the mornings, while Tessa caught up on sleep, and in the evenings, the three of us would enjoy dinner together when James returned from work, sharing stories and laughing. James seemed every bit the devoted husband and father I had raised him to be, helping with night feedings, bringing Tessa her favorite takeout when she was too tired to cook, and spending his weekends fully engaged with his family. "You raised an amazing man," Tessa told me one afternoon as we folded baby clothes together. "Do you know he still brings me coffee in bed every morning? 7 years of marriage, and he hasn't forgotten once." I beamed with pride. His father was the same way. Good men are consistent, Tessa. That's how you know their love is real. This weekend was special. Tessa's parents, Richard and Margaret, were hosting a birthday dinner for Tessa's sister, Stephanie. It would be my first time meeting Tessa's extended family, and I was looking forward to it. The dinner was planned for Sunday evening at their home in Brookline, and James suggested we pick up a special cake from an upscale bakery he knew. Mom, you'll love this place, James assured me as we discussed plans over breakfast. They make the most incredible cakes. Dad and I used to bring one home for your birthday every year, remember? I smiled at the memory. How could I forget? Those chocolate raspberry ones were divine. Little did I know that this simple cake errand would be the beginning of a painful journey, one that would test my faith in my son and force me to question everything I thought I knew about our perfect family. That fateful Sunday afternoon started like any other. James and I headed out to pick up the cake while Tessa stayed home to get the baby ready for the evening. It was a beautiful spring day, cherry blossoms dotting the trees, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of freshly cut grass. James drove his silver BMW with confidence, one hand casually resting on the steering wheel as he pointed out landmarks in his neighborhood. "That's where I take Lily for walks on the weekend," he said, gesturing to a small park with a duck pond. "And over there is the best coffee shop in town. Tessa and I had our first date there after we moved to Boston." I listened contentedly, admiring how well my son had built his life here. We pulled into the parking lot of Brookside Market, an upscale grocery store with an attached bakery. The red brick building was surrounded by perfectly manicured flower beds, and through the large windows I could see displays of gourmet foods and fresh produce. "I'll wait in the car," James said, checking his watch. "The order should be under Tessa's maiden name, Wilson. Would you mind picking it up? I need to make a quick work call." "Of course," I replied, grabbing my purse. "Anything else we need while I'm in there?" James shook his head. "Just the cake. Thanks, Mom." Inside, the market was buzzing with Sunday afternoon shoppers. Classical music played softly in the background as I made my way past artisanal cheese displays and imported wines to the bakery counter at the back. The cake was ready as promised, a stunning two-tier confection with delicate sugar flowers that matched the description James had given me. After collecting the cake, I headed to the checkout area. There were several cashiers working, and I chose a line that seemed to be moving quickly. The woman at the register appeared to be in her mid-30s, with shoulder-length brown hair pulled back in a ponytail and rectangular glasses perched on her nose. Her name tag read, Amy. She scanned items methodically, offering a polite smile to each customer. When it was my turn, Amy began ringing up the cake. "This is beautiful," she commented. "Special occasion. My daughter-in-law's sister's birthday," I explained. "First time meeting her family, actually." Something changed in Amy's expression. A flash of recognition followed by what looked like concern. Her hands paused over the register. "You said daughter-in-law," she asked, her voice dropping slightly. "Are you James Matthews' mother?" Surprised, I nodded. "Yes, I am. Do you know my son?" Amy glanced around nervously, as if making sure no one else could hear us. Then unexpectedly, she reached across the counter and grasped my hand. Her palm was clammy against mine, her fingers trembling slightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered, leaning closer. "But I think you should know something. Your son comes here every Tuesday with a woman who isn't his wife." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Excuse me. I've seen them together many times." Amy continued, her voice barely audible. "They're very intimate, holding hands, kissing. I recognized him when you mentioned being his mother. Same silver BMW in the parking lot." I pulled my hand away, a surge of defensive anger rising in my chest. "You must be mistaken. My son is happily married with a new baby." Amy's face flushed. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything, but I've seen them for months now. Always Tuesdays around lunchtime. They buy wine, fancy cheeses, sometimes flowers." She paused. If it were my family, I'd want to know." "You're wrong," I insisted, fumbling for my credit card. "James would never." Amy processed my payment in uncomfortable silence, then handed me the receipt. "I truly hope I'm wrong. I'm sorry if I've upset you." I took the cake box with shaking hands, my mind racing. This had to be a misunderstanding. Perhaps James had a colleague he met for lunch or a client he was close with. The cashier had jumped to conclusions, seeing something innocent and twisting it into something sordid. Yet, as I walked toward the exit, doubt crept in like a shadow. Instead of heading straight to the parking lot where James waited, I found myself turning toward a side door marked Employees Only that had been propped open with a crate of empty boxes. Acting on instinct, I slipped through it, finding myself in a loading area with a view of the parking lot. From this vantage point, I could see James in his car. He wasn't on a work call as he'd claimed. Instead, he was smiling at his phone, typing something quickly. The expression on his face was one I hadn't seen before. Secretive, almost giddy. He checked his appearance in the rearview mirror, ran a hand through his hair. Something cold settled in the pit of my stomach. I told myself I was being ridiculous, letting a stranger's insinuation poison my trust in my own son. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The drive back to the house was tense, though I tried to hide my discomfort. "Everything okay, Mom?" James asked as we pulled into the driveway. "You're quiet." "Just a bit tired." I lied, forcing a smile. "And nervous about meeting Tessa's family, I suppose." James squeezed my hand reassuringly. "They're going to love you, just like we do." I looked into his eyes, the same warm brown eyes he'd had since childhood, and tried to see if there was any deception there. But all I saw was my son, the boy I had raised to be honest and good. The cashier had to be wrong. She just had to be. The elegant Tudor-style home of Richard and Margaret Wilson stood impressively at the end of a long curved driveway lined with perfectly trimmed hedges. As James parked the car, I could see Tessa waiting for us at the front door, baby Lily dressed in an adorable pink outfit with matching headband. You made it," she called, waving. "Mom and Dad are so excited to meet you, Gloria." I stepped out of the car, pushing the uncomfortable encounter at the supermarket to the back of my mind. Tonight was about family, about celebrating Stephanie's birthday, and making a good impression on Tessa's parents. There would be time to sort through my confused thoughts later. The Wilson home was exactly as I'd imagined from Tessa's descriptions. Tastefully decorated with antique furniture, original artwork, and family photos covering every surface. Richard Wilson, a distinguished-looking man with silver hair and Tessa's same blue eyes, greeted me with a firm handshake. "So this is the woman who raised such a fine son-in-law," he said warmly. "We've heard nothing but wonderful things about you, Gloria." Margaret, elegant in a navy dress with her blonde hair swept into a chignon, embraced me like an old friend. "At last we meet. I feel like we already know each other from all our phone calls. Come, let me introduce you to Stephanie and her husband David." The evening progressed pleasantly enough. We enjoyed cocktails in the sunroom before moving to the dining room, where a lavish spread awaited us. Throughout dinner, I tried to remain engaged in conversation, complimenting Margaret on her home, discussing Stephanie's work as an architect, and sharing stories of James as a child when prompted. But part of my attention remained fixed on my son. James sat across from me at the table, and I couldn't help noticing that he checked his phone much more frequently than seemed necessary. At one point, while Richard was telling a story about his golf game, I saw James's phone screen light up with a text. Though I couldn't read the message, I caught a glimpse of the contact name. Simply L with a heart emoji next to it. "James, dear, no phones at dinner," Margaret chided gently. "Sorry," James replied, slipping the phone back into his pocket. "Might be work. We're in the middle of a big merger." 10 minutes later, his phone buzzed again. This time, James excused himself from the table. "Sorry, Evelyn. I really need to take this. Potential crisis with a client." As he stepped out onto the patio, I felt a strange impulse to follow him. I waited a moment, then quietly excused myself to use the restroom. Instead of heading upstairs, I moved silently toward the French doors that led to the patio, staying just inside where I could hear but not be seen. "I can't talk long," James was saying, his voice low. "Yes, I miss you too. I know it's hard." A pause. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. The usual time. I know. I'll make it up to you, I promise. I stepped back from the door, my heart pounding. This wasn't a work call. The tenderness in his voice, the secretive tone. This was personal, very personal. When James returned to the table, his expression was carefully composed, but I noticed a flush on his neck that always appeared when he was anxious. Everything okay at work? Tessa asked. All sorted, he replied smoothly. Just a misunderstanding with some paperwork. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. We sang happy birthday to Stephanie. Enjoyed the cake I'd picked up earlier. The memory of Amy the cashier's words echoing in my mind as it was served and posed for family photos. Through it all, I observed James with new eyes, noting how he seemed to avoid Tessa's touch, how his smile didn't quite reach his eyes when she spoke to him. That night in the guest room of James and Tessa's home, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Could it be possible was my son, my honest, upstanding son, having an affair? The evidence was circumstantial at best, a cashier's claim, a text from someone named L, a suspicious phone call. It wasn't enough to make accusations. It wasn't enough to risk destroying my relationship with my son and his family. But it was enough to make me doubt, enough to make me decide that I needed to know the truth one way or another. As dawn broke, I made a decision. Tomorrow was Tuesday, the day Amy claimed James regularly met this mystery woman. If there was nothing to hide, James would go to work as usual, attend his meetings, and come home to his family. But if Amy was right, I needed to see for myself. I would never have imagined myself planning to spy on my own child. But as I finally drifted off to sleep, I resolved that tomorrow I would discover whether the son I thought I knew so well had been living a double life. When I came downstairs Tuesday morning, James was already dressed for work in a crisp blue suit and striped tie, briefcase in hand. He was kissing Tessa goodbye in the kitchen, baby Lily balanced on her hip. Big day today, I asked, casually pouring myself a cup of coffee. James nodded, straightening his tie. Back-to-back meetings all day. Quarterly reviews with our biggest clients. Probably won't be home until late. That's too bad, Tessa said, adjusting Lily on her hip. Gloria and I were thinking of making your favorite lasagna for dinner. Save me some, James replied with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. These Tuesday meetings always run long. Don't wait up. He kissed Lily's forehead, gave me a quick hug, and headed for the door. After he left, I studied Tessa's face for any sign of suspicion, but she seemed completely at ease, wiping baby food from Lily's chin and chatting about plans for the day. I was thinking of taking Lily to my mom's yoga class this afternoon, she said. She does this wonderful mommy and baby session. Would you like to join us? Here was my opening. Actually, why don't I watch Lily for you? You could take a real break. Get your hair done, meet a friend for lunch. You deserve some time to yourself. Tessa looked tempted, but hesitant. Are you sure Lily can be a handful and you're supposed to be on vacation? Spending time with my granddaughter is exactly why I came, I insisted. Besides, it would give you two some special bonding time. Well, Mom has been asking me to try that new spa that opened downtown. Tessa mused. But James always has his long Tuesday meetings, and I hate to leave Lily with a sitter. That casual comment sent a chill through me. James always has his long Tuesday meetings. Every Tuesday, just as Amy had said. It's settled then, I said with forced cheerfulness. You call your mother and book those spa treatments. Lily and I will have a wonderful afternoon together. But as soon as Tessa left to call her mother, I made a call of my own to a local car rental agency. If I was going to follow James today, I couldn't use Tessa's car. She might notice the extra mileage, and besides, James would recognize it immediately if he happened to spot me. An hour later, I had a plan in place. I convinced Tessa that her mother should come pick up Lily at their house instead of me taking her to the spa. That way you two can head straight there and I can keep Lily in her familiar environment. I reasoned. Margaret was delighted to help, eager for extra time with her granddaughter. Once they were gone and Margaret had arrived to watch Lily, I claimed I needed to run errands and slipped out to pick up my rental car, a nondescript grey sedan that wouldn't stand out in traffic. I felt ridiculous, like a character in one of those detective shows Richard used to watch. But the knot of dread in my stomach told me this wasn't a game. I drove to James's office building in downtown Boston, finding a parking spot with a clear view of the entrance, but far enough away that he wouldn't notice me. The Hamilton and Reed offices occupied the top floors of a gleaming glass skyscraper. I checked my watch, 11:45 a.m. If Amy was right, and if James's pattern held, he would be leaving for lunch soon to meet this mysterious L. At 12:10, my vigilance was rewarded. James emerged from this building, checking his watch, before heading to the parking garage. I waited until his BMW appeared on the street, then carefully pulled into traffic, several cars behind him. Following someone through Boston traffic proved more difficult than films made it appear. Several times I nearly lost him at lights or when he made unexpected turns. My hands were sweaty on the steering wheel, my heart pounding each time I thought I'd lost his trail. But eventually, James pulled into a parking lot beside a charming cafe in a neighborhood I didn't recognize, about 15 minutes from his office. I parked across the street and watched as he entered the cafe, straightening his tie and running a hand through his hair before going in. The same nervous gesture I'd seen him make in the supermarket parking lot. Through the cafe's large windows, I could see him scanning the interior until his face suddenly lit up with a smile brighter than any I'd seen during my visit. He was moving toward the table in the corner where a woman waited. She stood to greet him, and even from a distance, I could see she was striking, tall and slender, with long auburn hair, wearing a fitted dress that accentuated her figure. When James reached her, they embraced, not the brief professional hug of colleagues, but a lingering hold that ended with a kiss that was definitely not platonic. My stomach lurched. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, fighting a wave of nausea. It was true. All of it. I watched in horrified fascination as they sat close together, his hand covering hers on the table, their heads bent toward each other in intimate conversation. They laughed together, and I saw James reach up to brush a strand of hair from her face, a tender gesture I had seen him do with Tessa countless times. After about an hour in the cafe, they left together, walking hand in hand to James's car. I followed again, this time to a boutique hotel a few blocks away. There was no mistaking their purpose as they entered together, James's hand resting possessively on the small of her back. I sat in my rental car, tears streaming down my face as the full weight of what I was witnessing crashed down on me. My son, the boy I had taught to always tell the truth, to honor his commitments, to treat others with respect, was betraying his wife and newborn daughter in the most fundamental way possible. For almost an hour I remained in that parking spot, alternating between grief and anger. How could he do this to Tessa, who had given up her career to raise their child? How could he risk his beautiful family for what? Excitement, novelty. Didn't he understand what he stood to lose? Eventually I collected myself enough to drive back to James and Tessa's house. I returned the rental car and took a taxi home, arriving before anyone else. When Tessa returned with her mother and Lily glowing from her spa day, I managed to put on a convincing show of having had a lovely, uneventful afternoon. "You look so relaxed, dear," I told her, taking Lily into my arms. "The spa must have worked wonders." "It was heavenly," Tessa sighed happily. "Thank you for suggesting it. I didn't realize how much I needed a break." When James came home that evening, briefcase full of work he claimed needed his attention, I could barely look at him. Every smile, every casual mention of his meetings, every kiss he gave Tessa and Lily felt like a knife twisting in my heart. I excused myself early, claiming a headache, unable to bear the charade any longer. In the privacy of the guest room, I faced a terrible dilemma. Should I confront James, tell Tessa, pretend I had seen nothing, the happy family I had been so proud of was a facade, and I didn't know how to proceed without shattering it completely. But one thing was clear: I couldn't leave Boston without doing something. The truth had found me unbidden, and now I was responsible for it. What I did with that truth would affect lives forever. I needed more information, more certainty, before I made my next move. The following days were agony. I maintained a cheerful exterior, playing with Lily, helping Tessa around the house, and making small talk with James when necessary. But internally, I was conducting a thorough investigation. I needed to understand the extent of James's deception, how long it had been going on, how serious it was, and whether he had any intention of ending it. When both James and Tessa were out of the house, I began my search. I felt like an intruder, a betrayer myself, as I carefully looked through James's home office. His laptop was password protected, but he had left his tablet behind, and I knew he sometimes used it for personal emails. The password, Lily's birth date, gave me access to his secondary email account, one I hadn't known existed. What I found confirmed my worst fears. The woman's name was Laura Benson. She worked at Hamilton and Reed as well in the marketing department. From their email exchanges, which dated back over a year, it appeared they had met at a company retreat and begun their affair shortly after. Their messages were intimate, filled with plans for rendezvous and future dreams together. Most disturbing were emails from the past few months after Lily's birth. In one, Laura wrote, "I know this is complicated with the baby now, but we'll figure it out together. I'm not going anywhere." James had replied, "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. I just need some time to sort things out. I promise we'll be together properly soon." My hands trembled as I read those words. Sort things out could only mean one thing. James was considering leaving Tessa and Lily for this woman. Next, I searched James's name online, adding Laura's to see what came up. Their professional lives were intertwined. Photos from company events showed them standing too close, James's hand often positioned at the small of her back. On Laura's social media, I found evidence of business trips they had taken together. Atlanta, Chicago, San Francisco. Always the same locations, always the same dates. In some photos, they were clearly in hotel rooms, though careful never to appear explicitly romantic in images that might be seen by colleagues. Then I made another discovery that turned my stomach. Using Tessa's laptop one afternoon to look up a recipe, I found access to their family cloud storage. Among the expected folders of baby pictures and home renovation photos was a hidden folder containing pictures of James and Laura together. Vacationing on a beach, dining at romantic restaurants, cuddled on a couch I didn't recognize. These weren't professional meetings. These were the photographs of a couple in love. But the final piece of evidence came when I borrowed James's tablet again to read a new novel while Tessa was napping. A text notification appeared from Laura. "Miss you already. Tuesday can't come fast enough. Have you thought more about what we discussed?" I clicked on the message and found their entire text history. The discussion referenced was clear. Laura was pressing James to make a decision about their future together. She wanted commitment, a timeline for when he would leave Tessa. And while James's responses were less direct, he wasn't shutting down the conversation. He was considering it. The weight of all I had discovered felt crushing. This wasn't a casual fling or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a full-fledged relationship that had been going on for a year, right through Tessa's pregnancy and Lily's birth. James had been living a complete double life and doing it so skillfully that no one, not his wife, not his mother, had suspected a thing. As I pieced together the timeline of the affair, painful memories surfaced from my own marriage. 20 years ago, Richard had a brief affair with a colleague. We had worked through it, rebuilt our marriage stronger than before. But the pain of that betrayal had never completely faded. I remembered the humiliation, the self-doubt, the nights spent wondering what I had done wrong. I wouldn't wish that pain on anyone, least of all the sweet young woman who had given my son a beautiful daughter. I compared Tessa and Laura in my mind. Tessa, kind, devoted selflessly, caring for their child while maintaining their home and supporting James's career. Laura, glamorous, ambitious, exciting perhaps, but willing to build her happiness on another woman's pain. The choice seemed so clear to me. How could James not see what he stood to lose? The innocent image I had of my son was shattered beyond repair. In its place was a man I barely recognized. Selfish, deceptive, willing to hurt those who loved him most for his own gratification. It broke my heart, but it also steeled my resolve. I hadn't raised him to be this man. I couldn't stand by and watch him destroy his family, without at least trying to intervene. After days of gathering information, I made my decision. I would confront James directly, privately. I would present what I knew and give him one chance to do the right thing. End the affair, immediately commit to his marriage, and get professional help. If he refused, I would tell Tessa myself. She deserved to know the truth to make her own informed choices about her future and her daughters. It was the hardest decision I'd ever had to make as a mother. Confronting my adult son about his moral failings went against every instinct to protect and support him. But sometimes true love means holding someone accountable when they've lost their way. I only hoped that somewhere inside the man James had become, the boy I raised still existed. The boy who understood right from wrong, who valued honesty and integrity above all. I set my plan in motion, waiting for the right moment, when Tessa would be out of the house, and James and I could speak privately. That opportunity came sooner than expected, when Tessa mentioned plans to take Lily to her sister's house for the afternoon. "Stephanie's desperate for some baby cuddles," she explained. "And I thought you and James might enjoy some mother-son time. He's actually taking a rare weekday off tomorrow. Something about system updates at the office making it impossible to work." I nodded, wondering if this day off had originally been planned for time with Laura, before my unexpected extended visit complicated his schedule. "That sounds lovely. It's been a while since James and I had a real conversation." Little did Tessa know just how real that conversation would be. The house was unnervingly quiet after Tessa left with Lily. James was in his home office, ostensibly catching up on emails during his day off. I stood in the hallway outside his door, a folder of printed evidence in my trembling hands, gathering courage for what would be the most difficult conversation of my life. I had rehearsed what I would say, how I would approach this delicate subject. But now, faced with the actual moment, all my careful planning seemed inadequate. This wasn't some troubled student in my counseling office. This was my son, the boy I had nursed through chickenpox, taught to ride a bike, helped move into his college dorm. How had we arrived at this terrible moment? Taking a deep breath, I knocked on his office door. "Come in," James called, his voice casual, unsuspecting. I entered to find him lounging in his desk chair, feet up, scrolling through his phone, with a slight smile on his face. When he saw me, he quickly set the phone down, screen face down. "Hey, Mom, need something?" "Yes, James?" I said, closing the door behind me. "We need to talk, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Something in my tone must have alerted him. He sat up straighter, his expression shifting from relaxed to guarded in an instant. "What's going on? Is everything okay?" "No, everything is not okay." I sat in the chair across from his desk, placing the folder in my lap. "I know about Laura, James." The color drained from his face. For a moment, he seemed frozen, then attempted a confused expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Laura, I don't know what you're talking about. Please don't lie to me," I said quietly. "Not anymore. I know about your affair. I've known for days now." "Mom, I don't know what you think. I opened the folder and placed several printed photos on his desk. Pictures of him and Laura together, screenshots of their emails, a copy of the hotel receipt I'd found in his briefcase while searching for evidence. "Last Sunday, a cashier at Brookside Market recognized me as your mother." I explained, my voice steadier than I felt. She told me you come there every Tuesday with a woman who isn't your wife. I didn't want to believe her, so I investigated myself. I followed you to that cafe, James. I saw you with her. I watched you go into that hotel together. James stared at the evidence before him, his face a mask of shock and dismay. He opened his mouth as if to deny it, again, then closed its shoulders, slumping in defeat. How much else do you know? He finally asked, his voice barely audible. I know it's been going on for at least a year. I know it continued through Tessa's pregnancy and after Lily was born. And I know you've been considering leaving your wife and daughter for this woman. James buried his face in his hands. When he looked up, I was surprised to see tears in his eyes. I never meant for any of this to happen. Nobody ever does, I replied, remembering similar words from his father 2 decades earlier. But you made choices, James. Hundreds of choices every day for a year to deceive the people who love you most. You don't understand, he said, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his voice. My life with Tessa. It's not what you see when you visit. We've been struggling for years. After Lily was born, it got worse. We're like roommates who barely talk except about the baby. And whose fault is that? I asked sharply. While Tessa was up all night with your newborn, you were texting your girlfriend. While she was learning to be a mother, you were planning romantic getaways with another woman. Did you ever really try to fix your marriage? Or was it easier to escape to someone who demanded nothing from you but excitement and flattery? James flinched as if I'd slapped him. It's not like that. Laura understands me in a way Tessa never has. We connect on every level, intellectually, emotionally. She challenges me. With Tessa, everything became so predictable. Predictable, I repeated incredulously. You have a 6-month-old daughter. Did you expect parenthood to be a thrill ride? Marriage is built in the quiet moments, James, in the partnership that weathers life's challenges together. Your father and I had our struggles too. I know Mom, Dad's affair. You think I don't remember that year? The fighting, the counseling. How you nearly left him. I was momentarily thrown off balance. We had never discussed Richard's affair openly with the children, though James had been 13 at the time, old enough to sense the tension in our home. Yes, your father made a terrible mistake, I acknowledged, but he recognized it for what it was, a mistake. He ended it, committed completely to rebuilding our marriage, and spent the next 20 years proving his loyalty. That's why we recovered, James. That's why we had 20 more happy years together. And what if I don't want to recover? James said quietly. What if Laura isn't a mistake? His words felt like a knife to my heart. Then you need to be honest with Tessa immediately. She deserves the dignity of the truth, not more deception. I'm not ready for that conversation yet. I need more time to figure things out. Figure what out exactly? How to avoid consequences? How to keep both women hanging on while you decide which life you prefer? My voice had risen, and I forced myself to take a calming breath. James, listen to me. I'm not here just as your mother. I'm here as someone who has been where Tessa is now. The longer this deception continues, the more damage you do. James stood up, abruptly pacing the small office. What exactly do you want from me, Mom? Why are you involving yourself in my marriage? Because I love you, I said simply. Because I raised you to be a better man than this. And because an innocent woman and child I also love are being hurt by your actions. He stopped pacing, running his hands through his hair in frustration. So what now? You tell Tessa, blow up my life completely. That depends on you, I said, gathering the photos and returning them to my folder. I'm giving you a choice. End the affair, completely and permanently. Call Laura today while I'm sitting right here and tell her it's over. Then commit to marriage counseling with Tessa, to rebuilding what you've damaged. If you do that, this conversation stays between us. And if I don't? I met his gaze steadily. Then I will tell Tessa everything I know. Not to punish you, but because she deserves the truth. I'm giving you 48 hours to make your decision and take action. James looked stunned. You would do that, betray your own son? The betrayal happened when you broke your vows, James. I'm simply refusing to be complicit in your continued deception. I stood up, clutching the folder to my chest. 48 hours, the clock starts now. As I turned to leave, James called after me, his voice cracking slightly. Mom, I do love Tessa and Lily. I never wanted to hurt them. I paused at the door, not turning around. Love isn't just a feeling, James. It's a choice you make every day through your actions. Right now, your actions are showing where your love truly lies. I closed the door behind me and made it halfway down the hallway before my legs gave out. I sank onto a decorative bench, my whole body trembling with the aftermath of adrenaline and emotion. What had I done? Had I just irreparably damaged my relationship with my only child? Was I wrong to intervene so directly in his adult life? But as I sat there trying to steady my breathing, I thought of Tessa, humming to Lily in the nursery, blissfully unaware of the sword hanging over her happy family. I thought of my tiny granddaughter, who deserved parents fully committed to her well-being. And I knew whatever the cost to my relationship with James, I had done the only thing my conscience would allow. Now the choice was his, and all I could do was wait and hope that somewhere inside, the man who had just confronted me so defiantly, the son I had raised, still existed. The next 2 days were among the most tense and uncomfortable of my life. James and I maintained a strained civility in Tessa's presence, but alone he either avoided me entirely or regarded me with a mixture of anger and betrayal. I caught him on his phone, frequently texting rapidly, his expression alternating between distress and determination. I watched for signs that he was ending the affair, a lengthy private phone call perhaps, or a shift in his demeanor that might indicate he'd made the difficult but right choice. But as the hours ticked by, I saw nothing conclusive. On the second evening, while helping Tessa bathe Lily, I nearly broke down and told her everything right then. Her trusting smile, her casual mentions of future plans with James. Each one felt like a fresh wound. But I had given my son my word, 48 hours. I would honor that, even if he might not honor his own commitments. That night, unable to sleep, I heard James come home late. From my partially open door, I watched him slip into his home office rather than the bedroom he shared with Tessa. Light spilled from beneath the office door until nearly dawn. In the morning, with just hours remaining in my ultimatum, I found James's tablet left conspicuously on the kitchen counter, while Tessa was upstairs dressing Lily. When I picked it up, it was unlocked and open to his text conversation with Laura. My heart sank as I read their most recent exchanges. I can't keep living this double life, James had written. Then don't, Laura had replied. I found that apartment I told you about. It's perfect for a fresh start. We could move in next month. What about Lily? James asked. We'll figure out custody arrangements. Lots of children have happy lives with separated parents. The important thing is we'll finally be together properly. The final text from James sent at 4:37 a.m. You're right. I'll talk to Tessa this weekend. It's time to be honest. My hand trembled as I set the tablet down. James wasn't choosing his family. He was choosing Laura. And while he was planning to tell Tessa this weekend, I knew from the apartment message that he and Laura had been making arrangements for some time. This wasn't a sudden decision. It was the culmination of long-term planning. My 48 hours weren't quite up, but I knew what I had to do. James had made his choice. Now I had to make mine. When Tessa came downstairs with Lily, I asked if we could talk privately once James left for work. Of course, she agreed easily. Everything okay? We'll discuss it later, I said, unable to meet her trusting gaze. It's important. James arrived in the kitchen dressed for work and kissed Tessa and Lily goodbye, with the same routine affection he always showed. When his eyes met mine over Tessa's shoulder, I saw a flash of challenge there. He thought I was bluffing. He didn't believe I would actually tell Tessa the truth. He had always underestimated me. After he left, I asked Tessa to sit with me in the living room. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear my own thoughts. How do you tell someone you love that their world is about to shatter? that the life they thought they had exists only in their perception. Tessa, sweetheart, I began, taking her hands in mine. What I'm about to tell you is going to be very painful, and I'm so deeply sorry to be the one bringing you this news. I don't believe you, Tessa said flatly, her face pale but composed after I had shown her the evidence I'd gathered. There must be some explanation. James wouldn't. Her voice trailed off as she stared at the photographs again. James and Laura kissing outside the cafe, entering the hotel together, their intimate emails about a shared future. Slowly, the denial in her eyes gave way to dawning comprehension. All those Tuesday meetings, she whispered. The overnight business trips, the times he was too tired to talk. Her hand flew to her mouth. Oh God, I was nursing our newborn while he was with her. I moved to sit beside her on the couch, putting my arm around her shoulders. I'm so sorry, Tessa. I confronted James 2 days ago, gave him the chance to end the affair and commit to your marriage. But this morning, I saw messages that made it clear he's planning to leave. Tessa's composure crumbled. She doubled over as if in physical pain, a raw sob tearing from her throat. How could he do this to us, to Lily? She clutched at her chest. I can't breathe. I can't think. I held her as she wept, my own tears flowing freely now. This was the pain I had hoped to prevent, the devastation I had seen coming, like a tsunami on the horizon. Now all I could do was try to help her survive the impact. When her sobs subsided into quieter weeping, Tessa suddenly sat up straight. I want to see him. Now I want him to tell me to my face. Are you sure that's... Yes, she said with sudden resolve. I won't be the clueless wife who finds out last. I won't give him the power to decide when and how to destroy my life. She stood up, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. Will you watch Lily for an hour? His office is 15 minutes from here. I nodded, admiring her courage even as I worried about her emotional state. Of course, whatever you need. While Tessa went upstairs to compose herself and change clothes, I called Margaret. Without revealing the specific crisis, I explained that Tessa needed her mother's support urgently. Margaret promised to come right over. Tessa left for James's office looking like a different woman than the happy, trusting one who had greeted the morning. Her face was set in determined lines, her movements deliberate and controlled. I watched her go with a mixture of pride and heartache. Whatever happened next, life for all of us would never be the same. Argish? Margaret arrived shortly after Tessa left, immediately sensing the severity of the situation from my expression. What's happened? Is Tessa all right? Is it James? Tessa will need to share the details herself, I said carefully. But she's going to need her family's support now more than ever. We sat together in silent vigil, taking turns holding Lily until we heard Tessa's car in the driveway, about 90 minutes after she'd left. She entered the house like a ghost, pale, hollow-eyed, moving, as if every step required conscious effort. He admitted everything, she said tonelessly, sinking into an armchair. He didn't even try to deny it when I confronted him with what I knew. He just confirmed it, said he was going to tell me this weekend anyway. A bitter laugh escaped her. He was annoyed that I forced his hand, as if the timing of finding out your husband betrayed you matters. Margaret rushed to her daughter's side, enfolding her in a maternal embrace that finally seemed to penetrate Tessa's shock. As they clung to each other, Tessa's tears returned in earnest. He's not coming home tonight, Tessa managed between sobs. He's staying at a hotel. To give me space, he said, as if he's being considerate. The rest of that day passed in a blur of tears, hurried phone calls, and practical arrangements. James came briefly to collect some clothes, while Tessa was at her parents' house with Lily. I was the only one home when he arrived, his face haggard but resolute. I never wanted it to happen like this, he said, standing awkwardly in the entryway of what had been his home. How exactly did you want your betrayal to unfold, James? I asked coldly. Was there a good way to abandon your wife and child for your mistress? He flinched. Laura isn't my mistress. I love her. I'm sorry you can't understand that. What I understand is that you're throwing away everything of real value in your life for an illusion. And someday, maybe soon, maybe years from now, you'll realize what you've lost. James shook his head. You're wrong, Mom. Sometimes marriages end. Sometimes people find happiness elsewhere. Dad did. Your father made a mistake and had the wisdom to recognize it. I corrected him sharply. He chose his family, his integrity. You're choosing selfishness. This conversation is pointless. James sighed, heading toward the stairs. I need to get my things. One more thing, I called after him. Your father would have been profoundly disappointed in the man you've become. James paused on the stairs, his back stiffening, but he didn't turn around or respond. He disappeared upstairs, returning 10 minutes later with a hastily packed suitcase. Without another word to me, he left the door closing with a quiet finality behind him. The weeks that followed were among the most painful I've ever experienced. I extended my stay in Boston indefinitely, moving to a nearby hotel, but spending my days helping Tessa cope with the aftermath of James's betrayal. She alternated between grief rage and crushing self-doubt, questioning every aspect of her marriage. Was any of it real? She asked one night as we sat together after putting Lily to bed. Did he ever truly love me, or was I just convenient, the right kind of wife for his career image? He did love you, I assured her, believing it despite everything. James made terrible choices, but the love was real. People are complicated, Tessa. They can love deeply and still act selfishly. James moved in with Laura, almost immediately, renting the apartment they had been planning together. He filed for divorce within weeks, claiming the marriage had been irretrievably broken for some time, a narrative that conveniently absolved him of responsibility. The family was fractured. Richard refused to speak to James, and Margaret vacillated between fury and tearful attempts to understand. Stephanie, always protective of her sister, sent James a scathing email that he forwarded to me in hurt confusion, as if expecting his aunt to take his side. Through it all, I maintained a strained relationship with my son, not for my sake, but for Lily's. Whatever James had done, he was still her father, and I was determined that my granddaughter would not lose that connection because of adult conflicts. I don't know how you can even speak to him, Tessa confessed once. If I didn't have to coordinate Lily's visits, I'd never talk to him again. I speak to the son I raised, I explained, the boy who had integrity and compassion. I have to believe that person still exists somewhere inside the man he's become. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, at first I began to see glimpses of that boy returning. It started with small things. James asking genuinely about Tessa's well-being during custody exchanges, offering additional financial support beyond what the temporary agreement required, remembering important appointments for Lily without being reminded. 3 months after the separation, James called me at my hotel room, his voice thick with emotion. I've started seeing a therapist, he said without preamble. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did. Why I hurt everyone I care about. That's a good first step, I replied cautiously. The thing is, he continued hesitantly, I'm starting to realize this relationship with Laura, it's not what I thought it was. The excitement is wearing off, and underneath. He paused. I miss my family, Mom. I miss Lily every moment I'm not with her. And Tessa, the way she looked at me that day in my office like I was a stranger. I can't get it out of my head. What are you saying, James? I don't know yet, he admitted. I'm confused. Laura and I have been fighting. She doesn't understand why I need to spend so much time with Lily. She thought things would be different once we were together officially. I chose my words carefully. Reality rarely matches fantasy, James, especially when that fantasy was built on deception. He was quiet for a long moment. Do you think Tessa could ever forgive me? Even just enough that we could co-parent better? I can't answer that, I said honestly. Tessa is stronger than you realize and more compassionate. But trust once broken is very difficult to rebuild. It would take time, consistent effort, and genuine remorse, not just regret for the consequences. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Not just because my life is harder now, but because I caused so much pain to people I love. It was the first genuine apology I'd heard from him. A small step, but significant. Over the following months, James's relationship with Laura deteriorated further. The fantasy of their life together collided with the reality of his parental responsibilities, her career aspirations, and the judgment of colleagues who had discovered the affair. By the 6-month mark, James was living alone in a small apartment closer to Tessa's house. To be near Lily, though I suspected proximity to his estranged wife was equally motivating. Tessa, meanwhile, had begun to rebuild her life with remarkable resilience. She returned to part-time work as an interior designer, joined a support group for divorced parents, and developed a new independence I hadn't seen in her before. When James tentatively suggested they try family therapy for Lily's sake, I was surprised when Tessa agreed. "I'm not doing this for James," she explained when I expressed my surprise. "I'm doing it for Lily and for myself. I need to process my anger in a healthy way if I'm going to be the mother Lily deserves." Their first session was awkward and tense, according to Tessa, but they continued week after week. I sat in on one session at their therapist's suggestion, offering perspective as both James's mother and Tessa's supporter throughout the crisis. "Gloria and Bob," the therapist asked during that session, "how do you view your role in this family now?" I considered the question carefully. "I see myself as a keeper of hope," I finally said. "Not necessarily hope that the marriage can be saved. That's not for me to decide. But hope that whatever form this family takes going forward, it can be healthy and loving for Lily. Hope that both James and Tessa can find peace and forgiveness, whether together or apart." James looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Even after everything I did, you still believe in me." "I believe in the man you can choose to be," I corrected gently. "Every day is a new opportunity to make better choices, James. Your father taught me that." A year after that fateful day at the supermarket, our family gathered to celebrate Lily's first birthday. It was a small party at Tessa's house, just Tessa's parents, her sister, myself, and James. The atmosphere was subdued compared to what might have been, but there was a tentative warmth that hadn't existed in the immediate aftermath of the separation. James and Tessa moved around each other with cautious courtesy, co-parenting, with increasing effectiveness if not intimacy. James had ended his relationship with Laura months earlier and had been demonstrating through consistent action, rather than promises, his commitment to being a present father and respectful co-parent. Whether Tessa and James would ever reconcile romantically remained uncertain, some wounds cut too deep for complete healing. But watching them sing "Happy Birthday" to Lily together, their faces illuminated by the single candle on her cake, I saw something I had feared lost forever. The foundation of a family damaged, but not destroyed. As for me, my relationship with James had been fundamentally altered. The unquestioning trust was gone, replaced by a more clear-eyed understanding of my son as a flawed human being, capable of both terrible mistakes and genuine growth. I loved him no less but differently, with awareness rather than idealization. The cashier at Brookside Market, Amy, had changed everything with her simple act of speaking truth. At the time, it had felt like the worst thing that could have happened. But looking back, I realized it had been necessary. The painful truth had forced its way to the surface, and in doing so had prevented years of deeper deception and damage. Sometimes the most loving act is not protecting someone from consequences, but ensuring they face them before even more harm is done. It's a lesson I hope I never forget, and one I hope James carries with him for the rest of his life. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between loyalty and doing what's right, whether in your family or with friends? Let me know in the comments below. Your experiences might help others facing similar dilemmas. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, Sometimes true love means having the courage to stand for truth, even when it breaks your heart to do so.